Welcome back to the Market Your Tradie Business podcast. Today, I'm really excited to sit down with Matt Jones from Tradie Web Guys. Welcome to the show, Matt. How are you going today?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Today, we're going to be talking about some of the ways that you as a tradie business owner can be cutting through the marketing noise and to be seen and heard. And Matt is going to be sharing his insights and experience about some of the ways that you can do this. I guess let's get started, Matt, by asking a bit about you and your background. I know that you have a really interesting story about how you went from a plumber to tradie marketing agency owner. So, yeah, tell us about that.
That's right. I used to be, in a former life, I was a plumber. I did my apprenticeship on the North Shore of Sydney. I loved it. I was only chatting with another former tradie yesterday. We both kind of miss that hands-on aspect. It's quite rewarding, that whole building, be able to build something and look back at it. Now with the dynamic of what we do, it's a little bit different. Like now we build websites and we create, lead generation campaigns and things like that for trade businesses. And this is the message that I preach a lot as well with, on the Site Share podcast. Where you start is not where you end up, and going into a trade can open a lot of wonderful doors of opportunity for you guys out there, as long as you don't have your blinkers on. So keep your eyes peeled. I mean, it took me around the world actually plumbing, and I loved it. I worked over in North America and in Europe and all sorts of cool places and cool projects. When I came back home after a 3-year stint gallivanting around the planet, I started taking a bit more of an interest in business, and I ended up in a sales and marketing position for a plumbing company where we were essentially selling a technology out of Europe to plumbers in Asia Pacific. That sort of got me exposed to a lot of businesses that were really great at what they do. One thing led to another, and we ended up through necessity. We'd sold a couple of these guys these huge packages worth $250,000, and they weren't selling it because they didn't have a website. So I built a couple of websites for these guys sort of on the side, and then I realized it's actually quite a decent opportunity for someone that specializes just in this. And so I did everything wrong, threw the towel in on the job, which I hated anyway, and set up an agency. And that was 12 years ago, when back then we were pretty much only websites, and now we're essentially full service marketing solutions for trade businesses, which include everything from websites, lead generation, lead nurturing, content creation, marketing, CRM, sales management, the whole thing. So it's quite an interesting journey. And that led us into, I suppose, the education side of things, where I was really keen, and I was sort of pretty proactively at that point talking to TAFEs in Sydney, mostly the one that I went to, but a few others around Sydney. And then the Department of Education down in Canberra, I was sort of flying the flag as the only non.gov.edu.au email addresses on the panel there. And it was quite interesting speaking about the apprenticeships and the things that relate to that. But it was such a small little audience there of 20 odd people or something within a room at any given time. So that led me think, how can I reach a wider audience here? So back in 2016, I started the Site Shed podcast, and now 360 or 70 odd episodes in, one of the larger trade business podcasts on the planet.
Wow, that's such an inspiring story for, I imagine, most business owners. When I came across your podcast, I was just blown away at the topics that you discuss. They're so diverse, and the experience that you bring. The fact that you have done so many episodes, I mean, that is podcast goals. How did you come up with the idea for the podcast, and how do you find the energy to keep doing it? Because it takes a lot to do a podcast, as I'm learning in such early days of this process.
Probably dumb luck, to be honest. I started podcasting before it was cool. And before anyone with an iPhone and a microphone sort of decided to do it. My thought process behind starting the podcast was I knew my customer avatar was someone that was slightly tech savvy, been around and interested in learning the business, side of the marketing and sales part of their business and improving that. That's who we wanted to work with. And so I thought, well, probably people that are going to be listening to podcasts, even back in its infancy, back in 2016. And so it was a slow burn, and we had a new and noteworthy strategy where we wanted to hit that within 5 weeks, which was it was important back then with iTunes. It's probably not so important back now, although that said, I don't even really know. It was a long time ago, but we hit that in 5 days and we stayed there for about 2 years.
Wow.
It sort of went from 0 to 100 pretty quick on the podcast side of things. But again, it was a slow burn. It was a lot of, like, I look back at the work I did, back when I didn't have a team doing a lot of the stuff. I did 3 podcasts a week for 6 months or something. And I look back at it now and I go, how did I run a business and do that? Well, the simple answer is I didn't really run the business because the podcast took up most of the energy to my detriment, perhaps. But, the reality is it was a lot of work, and it still is quite a lot of work. But now I've just got a great team behind me that do a lot of the heavy lifting.
That's so cool. I love hearing about that. So you've literally been in business outside of the trade industry as a plumber for about 10 years now, from what I understand.
It's funny because I'm like out of it, but I'm in it. Like, I'm probably more in it than I ever have been, but through the eyes of our clients, So
yeah,
it's quite an interesting dynamic, sort of coming from that background, but now being able to look at it with a slightly different perspective, which is in truth probably like it's quite a big differentiator. Like, there's like being able to talk the talk with with our clients, and then like understanding, having a 12-year, history now with the marketing landscape for small business. It's quite an interesting, unique combination, which I think kind of works in our favour a little bit.
Absolutely. Like, I'm sure it's been a huge testament to your success, like the fact that you have got that history and that experience and are able to bring that into this space, which, not a lot of people are able to say that they can do. I guess if we look at the last decade, like you say, that landscape of marketing really has evolved a lot. How do you think tradies as business owners have had to evolve to kind of keep up with it over the last 10 years?
I guess it's just the nature of business, to be honest. Like, it's ever evolving. And I think the key to succeeding in small business today is agility, and like whatever that looks like in whatever department, like the ability to be able to make fast decisions and shift and try different things, and that's the big advantage of small business. When you look at some of larger business, which have got a lot of red tape and a lot of compliance and 15 levels of management to get through to make a decision on a website, they just don't have that advantage that small businesses have, where they can go, no. And that's the thing, you've just got to try things. And like over the last 10 years, we've seen this whole landscape of marketing take this huge shift in dynamic, like even in the online space, where now you've got like all these social media channels, and there's a new one every 10 minutes, like today it's TikTok, what's it going to be tomorrow? Who knows, So you don't necessarily have to adopt all of these things, but it's certainly sort of nice to be receptive and understand what they are. And I mean, in truth, my marketing girl will probably listen to this and just be shaking their head laughing, because I've avidly said I'm not doing TikTok, and then I found out 2 days ago that we actually have 2 accounts, and we've actually got quite a good following on there, and I couldn't even tell you what they are, but I'm guessing it's the site share the Tradie Web Guys. So anyway, the point is you just kind of got to be where the trends are, and whatever that means in whatever department. And marketing is only one of them. You look at accounting, for example. In truth, even when I started the business 12 years ago, like I think Xero accounting had been around for a year or two, and I was one of the early adopters. I just got straight onto it. Before that, we were doing things from a spreadsheet. Things evolve, technology evolves, departments evolve, and now we're in a situation, where, we Google Workspace resellers as well. Before that, it was like server-based email hosted on GoDaddy and things like that. And, you speak with business owners today that, in truth, like even myself, like we were set up with, back then it was Google Apps from the word go, and we were set up with Xero from the word go. But you speak to business owners that today, they don't know any different. They have no idea how good they've got it. Like even the concept of, having to run your accounting system through a spreadsheet is ludicrous to them, It's like trying to tell my 3-year-old daughter about what telephones used to look like, with the dial-up thing. Like, she just looks at you like, you're obviously joking.
This is a joke, right?
Yeah. So I think just it's important that, like, as business owners, you need to be responsive and receptive to change, and have the ability to make agile decisions based on data, not based on like fashion, but be willing and receptive to the fact that you are going to have to make changes.
I don't know about you, but in my business, I'm such a typical person for going after a different idea every week. And I have to really rein myself in. And I've learned about myself and that I typically will do that over time. Do you ever find that in your business?
Not anymore. Like, I'm probably on the other side of the spectrum these days. Although at one point, like I must admit, like I call it shiny object syndrome. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but like I see something really flashy and I'm like, ooh, let's look at this. But now I've sort of got the, I'm unfortunate where, I can post something like that, whether it's a new bit of tech or something like that into, a channel, Google chat where, part of the team who needs to see it will look at it and they'll be like, yes, it's a good idea, or no, it's not a good idea, and these are the reasons why, So technology is a tricky one because technology changes so much, and I'm one of those people that over the years have literally used every single CRM on the planet because of one feature that I liked about something the other one didn't have, and then in the grand scheme of things, did it really make a difference? Probably not. Now we've got our own CRM, which was over at tradiehub.net, which is basically a sales and marketing CRM for tradies. But like before that, like we were just jumping ship all over the place, and it just leads you down the path of like technology paralysis, where essentially you just end up with all these thousands of pieces of tools and subscriptions and stuff for technology that you never use, or you use to a fraction of its ability, and like all because you wanted to try something new, which is just a complete waste of time.
Yeah. And it all adds up, doesn't it? Those subscriptions, like you can look at your P&L for last month and be like, how did I spend that much money on subscriptions?
Oh, it's insane. It is. Like, I mean, when we build our own with a whole bunch of stuff in it, like we can save businesses $1,500 a month on subscription fees.
Tell me about that. How did you get to building your own CRM? Because that's, I'm sure, not software development isn't an easy feat.
It's just sort of that whole thing through trying to scratch your own itch. Like, we've spent years and years, like the bane of my existence is the disconnect between things like job management tools and what we need from a marketing agency, which is sales and marketing CRM. We need the ability to be able to send clients, and not yet clients. More to the point, like a lot of these job management tools are great for managing, customers once they become or contacts once they become a customer, but they have zero input whatsoever, from a lead perspective. So, when you're in a situation of lead nurturing and lead generation, that kind of stuff, you need the ability to be able to, have marketing landing pages and have lead magnets and, have email marketing automations and text message campaigns and all this kind of stuff, which like there are some tools that do it, but then there's nothing that really does everything. And in truth, there never will be anything that does everything. But it was, just a real need of scratching our own itch basically so we could deliver a product that had like the ability to do all the things that we kind of selfishly wanted at our end, but then at the same time just drastically cuts tech stack, like by an eighth, just simplify dashboards and just have everything sort of in one place. Like it's just so much easier.
That's fantastic.
And let's have the ability to sort of scale and use it to scale, like it's so much easier for a business when they've got a tool that they can actually like use and have support with and integrate with their other tools, whether that's, Simpro or Aeroflow or ServiceMate or, Procore or whatever it is, like just having those integrations, which is the hardest thing because so many of these, job management tools, like you essentially need to have 2 points of data entry when you're trying to connect like an email marketing tool with it or something like that. And it's just a waste of time. Or you've got to use Zapier, some sort of connector, which is a band-aid really, because it's not like they can be a bit hit and miss.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
that's awesome. Well, when you have the problem, just build your own. Why not?
Yeah, well, in truth, I don't recommend that for anyone, to be honest with you. Like it's a bit of a painful journey, and I don't encourage it. But I suppose we were sort of at a point where we were like, well, we either fix this or we just stop doing it, because like they were the options really. Like we were just fed up of I mean, the resource behind, like at our end, the resource behind trying to integrate and, manage a whole suite of different tools on behalf of a client was just insane. Like it was, you couldn't justify it with the invoice you were selling them. It was that high.
Yeah.
And so we either just stop doing this altogether or we just find a solution. So we ended up down this rabbit bar, and here we are.
Here we are. Well, on that topic, like the whole management of all the different, I guess, systems and processes and integrations and everything that goes with actually like managing your marketing, which obviously you guys do for your clients, it's still super overwhelming, even for the people who are, a little bit more tech savvy or very focused on development in their business. So what would you say to the people who just don't even know where to start with marketing in general, but also with, adding some more tech systems in to automate some of their work?
Less is more. That's always, again, even going back to tech stack, like this, the less you got, the better, And I don't encourage people to jump around between different things. Like so often we hear, clients are like, oh, we went from this to that. And I go, why? And they're like, well, because this one does that better. I'm like, you're using like a tenth of the program. Like it's not the tool; it's just that you haven't onboarded properly. You haven't adopted. You've had poor adoption throughout the company. Like it's so often just a training thing. It's a confusing landscape, I suppose, from a marketing perspective, but it doesn't always have to be. Like in essence, it's like the core focus should be for most businesses out there when it comes to marketing is, well, how do we get our message in front of the right people? That will vary from business to business, and that varying process is called strategy. So if you haven't got the strategy initially, the customized strategy to suit that individual business, then like it's very, very rarely is it a one glove fits everyone sort of scenario. You just got to have that conversation up front so that it's clear and so you understand where those opportunities lie for your specific business. And those opportunities could be like across so many different parts of a marketing landscape, from paid ads through to organic marketing and SEO, through to social, through to commercial outreach. So there's so many different things that you could do there. If you don't have the strategy down, you're just shooting in the dark, really.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a fundamental metaphor for business in general, is just take the time to think, spend more time with strategy. If businesses out there spent more time sharpening the axe than they did trying to chop the wood, they'd be a lot further ahead.
I think that's really sage advice. Spend the time working on your business as well as in it and thinking about what's next. And in today's world, like it's really, I think, a currency of attention. Like it's so, when it comes to getting that strategy and like you say, that right message for your right audience, it can be really hard to cut through the noise and be seen and be heard in the way that you need. So what would be your insights and advice on some of the best ways that as a small business you can get in front of the right people and get your message heard?
They don't necessarily have a lead problem. They just got a conversion problem. And most of that conversion problem comes as a result of them not applying the right resource to telling their story enough. People sort of have that opinion and mindset of the website sort of being a necessary evil, where in reality you can really use that website to showcase your expertise, tell your story better. And so very often we find that, websites may be getting enough traffic, but they're just not telling, the message isn't clear enough. And, they're not showcasing, what it is they do. And that sometimes can be enough to move the needle. In other instances, it might involve something a little bit more involved from a content perspective, and like creating the right content and getting it out there and getting it in front of the right eyes. But like you say, there's a lot of noise out there in the marketing landscape. Some of that noise is necessary, but then you've also got to think a little bit more proactively in the space of, well, what am I going to do to stand out against some of this noise? Like, yes, people are looking for certain things online, so I've got to be there. But once they click on that, then what does that look like? What does that journey look like? How can I make myself stand aside from, the next person? A lot of that can be addressed through content strategies and things like that.
And when you talk about telling more stories, can you give an example of like how someone would, implement that in, say, their content
trying to put yourself on a pedestal, and not necessarily to make your competitors look bad, just to make you look professional. And like, that whole situation where you can, don't tell me, show me. How can you show people what you do? And how can you, if somebody calls up, like, how can you back up your claim? What does that look like? Like, have you got content on your website that speaks to, maybe a project that you've completed, or maybe it's a case study with a client, or maybe it's a certain product that you work with in the, home monitoring space or whatever, but like something that goes a little bit beyond you just saying to them, oh yeah, we can do that. I'll send you an invoice. Like, okay, great. Like, what about, yeah, we can do that. Here, is this what you're looking for? Like something that actually backs up the claim. So it's very different to like all different businesses based on who their avatar is and, I suppose the messaging they're wanting to communicate. At the end of the day, it's just about being useful and relevant to people. And, you're in a situation where people are coming to you for information, and as a business owner and a, potential trusted advisor, you've got a responsibility, if not an obligation, to provide that information to them. And most business owners don't have anything that they can back up their claim with. If somebody's coming to you for something, let's give them something that can back up our claim. And so I typically say to business owners out there, just start with the 5 top questions you get asked all the time and design a bit of content around that. That's a great place to start. First of all, it's like has a compounding effect from your time perspective, which means if somebody calls up and they say, hey, just wanted to ask you about the, if you've done any Rinnai hot water installation bans on apartment blocks, you can go, well, actually, yeah, I have. We've done a couple. I'm just going to email you a couple of links and just let the content do the selling for you, Or you can stand there and go, yeah, we have. Should I come out to the job and like, and waste everyone's time kind of situation, like you're better off just trying to maximize your efficiency through educating.
That's actually one of the things that we do in the video production space is we call it the 80% video. So we say, what are 80% of the questions that your customers will be currently asking at this stage of the customer journey?
Right.
And then we take those top 5 or 7 questions, make individual videos about them so that they can flick out the individual links, or we'll make one 80% video. Because ultimately, by the time that you can get to that sales conversation, how much of a better experience is it going to be for your customer if by the time that they get there, not only do they know all of the answers to the top questions they've most likely got, but they've actually learned them from you. They already know your face. Mm-hmm. They know, what you look like, what you sound like. They've got a bit of rapport with you as a person. So like, I completely back up what you're saying in terms of, letting the content do the talking for you. These are assets that you can create once, and they're evergreen and can become, that part of your sales process and actually invite your customers into the story as well.
Yeah, and that's like, so video is like one of the best things really for businesses to use, like in my opinion, because it's so easily repurposed into like when clients come to us and they've got video, it's like music to our ears, because it means we can, like, it's a really like it's an easy upper foot for us to basically go and create other supporting content around it. You can break it down, you can chop it up, you can syndicate it, you can extract audio and turn it into podcast. You can do all this kind of stuff with video. The caveat, of course, is like most business owners have this fabricated fear around the whole video conversation.
Oh yeah.
But again, if you want the result, you've got to do the thing. And like, we just say that like with any sort of content. But anyway, the point, I suppose, is not necessarily, which medium you choose. It's the strategy behind it and getting out there and creating a strategy, which is the most important part to address. First of all, okay, what's the message we want to communicate? And then second of all, well, what sort of consistency and cadence are we going to be delivering this content at, so that we are seen as a trusted advisor, not just like someone that's got like a one and done sort of, blog on their website sort of thing. I'd say for like anyone out there that's looking for a place to start, first of all, I'd just be sitting down with a pen and paper and doing that 80-20 video. Once you sort of, like we find when we work on that process with some of our clients, it then opens up their peripherals a little bit to other areas of their business. And essentially what you're doing is you're creating a system or an SOP for a client. So when we do this we do this exercise with our customers, and they're like, oh, cool. So now we're educating our customers about this thing. It's kind of like an SOP for their customers. And then they start thinking in that space, and then all of a sudden they're like, actually, we should do some of these things internally. So now all of a sudden they start creating these, video recordings for their team members, and then they start building systems and they start building an asset into their business. And so it kind of has this systemic advantage where all of a sudden they start, like these little serendipities start popping up all over the place of like things that they probably hadn't considered if they hadn't started the initial process. That's always the case with anything, it's like mind mapping. You start somewhere and all of a sudden you've got this mega web of like opportunities and ideas, which all started from, 2 or 3 points. So the key is getting started.
Getting started is the hardest part for all of us as business owners, I'm sure.
The reason I've found that it's hard is because, like, as plumbers and builders and, sparkies and whatever, we're used to climbing ladders and, replacing switchboards and digging holes and whatever. The paradigm shift that needs to happen there is in the space of, like, I'm not a plumber anymore. I need to be a business owner. If I'm here to market the business, then at some point I'm going to put a marketing hat on. That penny drop moment for the business owner when they realise, okay, well, I need to take this hat off and put this hat on in order for this to actually become a reality. Once they have that realization, then becomes part of the process. And once it's become part of the process, it gets done. And it will consistently get relegated on the list of important things to do, right behind, going to the pub with the team on Friday to talk smack and watch UFC or whatever. You just need to have that bigger perspective on where you want to go and then how you need to get there.
And getting the right help and support with the process if you've never done it before, which is most people. I mean, you're not taught how to market a business when you go to TAFE. But if you are struggling getting started because you don't know how, then getting those right people on your team to support with that process and strategy, like you say, is going to be that critical first step to get you going. And so many people I see that I work with, once they get momentum, they get really excited. It's no longer this big scary thing. It's actually they're really excited about what they can create content about the next week.
It becomes fun, and it's one of those things where initially, especially video, like for most people, it's a scary concept and a scary proposition, and it kind of ties in relatively closely to the public speaking fear, where most people would rather be dead. They fear public speaking over death, which is insane. Like it's a fabrication, but the reality is it's one of those things where it's a skill. You've got to do it to get better at it. It's like, you didn't wake up one morning and be, an amazing tennis player. You trained and you practice, and over time you got better at it. Same thing. So I think once people understand that it is a skill and it can be improved, that's quite a revelation for them. But the other reality is it doesn't have to be polished, and it shouldn't always be polished. Podcasts are designed to be raw. They're conversations. You look at highly edited, over-polished podcasts, and they just sound like an audiobook. If I want to listen to an audiobook, I'll go listen to an audiobook. Don't be afraid to get started, and don't be afraid to make mistakes, and don't be afraid to have a laugh at the mistakes. People will relate to that. It's all part of your journey, and people know you're a plumber, they know you're an electrician. They're not expecting some Steven Spielberg, production. Just get out there and get started. And they're often the ones that get the best results, and the ones that are a bit rough around the edges, and the ones that where your dog runs into your office or your kid just banging on the door. They're the kind of things that people sort of
people relate.
Resonate with. Yeah, exactly.
I've only been in business for about 3.5 years now, so nothing compared to yourself. But if I think about my biggest challenge, it's always been mindset, and kind of similar to what we're talking about now with people just getting started. It has been, mindset challenges about feeling that I can do the thing, and just sometimes you build things up in your mind so much and it becomes bigger than it needs to be. What's been your biggest challenge, and how have you overcome that in your business?
I learned earlier in the piece that mindset was you can do anything that you want to do, really. If you're focusing on the result and not the actual process, then the process becomes irrelevant because you're going after the result. You're not getting caught up in what it's going to take to get there. And so, from a strategic point of view, and this is why I say to guys, it's so important to spend the time thinking and spend the time on the strategy, because once you understand what the end result is, when you reverse engineer that into years and months and weeks and days and daily actions, like all of a sudden you're like, you mean all I've got to do is this to get that? And this becomes completely inconsequential. Like it's just insignificant in the grand scheme of things because it's so often such a minimal thing that you need to overcome. And like that's an empowering feeling. This may be uncomfortable at first, whatever it is, but I know I can do it as long as I like stick it out and actually give it a decent crack and don't run off with my tail between my legs. But the reality is most people, because they haven't got that end picture in mind, they don't really understand where they want to go, then, those little, as soon as they run into a little speed bump, they just throw the towel in because it's like hard, or there's, maybe they get a negative feedback from someone or whatever it is, right? The mindset is important. It's really important because, you need to have that belief. They're the things that I suppose you need to go and seek help for. And I'm not talking about shiny object syndrome, or maybe it is, but like understanding, okay, well, if this is the result that I need, then what's going to help me get here? Is it a person? Is it a book? Is it a podcast? Is it a coach? Is it like a program, or what is it? Like if you don't have a clear understanding of what you need to do and what you want to get, then like it's almost impossible to go and find the path towards it. And as business owners, like your role within your business will change consistently. Like last year, I spent the entire year in HR designing our HR system, recruitment and all that kind of stuff. And now this year, my focus is pretty much entirely sales, and because we're building out our sales department and we're doing all this kind of stuff. Like they're two completely different roles within the business. But as a business owner, how do I go and learn about this so I can build this out within the organisation? If I want to be here in 3 years, then what do I have to do progressively in order to get there? And what do I have to remove myself from doing in order to get there? And, for a lot of the tradies out there that we work with, there's that whole, cliche clickbait, get off the tools, like whatever, which is complete bullshit, to be honest, because for most cases, what the business owner wants to do is stay on the tools. They don't want to do the other shit. They don't want to do the accounting. They don't want to do the bank reconciling. They don't want to do the invoicing. They don't want to do the HR. They want to be out there managing the guys on the site, which is what they're trained in and what they're good at. So then the conversation becomes, okay, cool. Well, how do we remove ourselves from all the other crap so that someone else can do that, so we can, stay in our sweet spot? So, yeah, it's a process.
I love what you said about reverse engineering it as well and focusing on the process and not on the outcome. I do want to just go back to that question of like what challenge you have had to overcome in your business.
Man, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a new challenge every week popping up. Like, now we've got a team of probably close to 25 staff and,
wow.
Like that comes, and that happened quick, that went from probably 5 to 25 in the space of 7 or 8 months. As your business evolves and you look back on, the history of your business, you'll constantly see or have memories of things that seemed like huge problems back at the time. And now it's just like you wouldn't even bat an eyelid to it. Like for me, I had zero business finance literacy, like I was a plumber. I had no idea. So like I took this huge journey on, understanding, and I'm on a constant journey, when it comes to, business financing and finances and investing and all this kind of stuff that you don't get taught at TAFE. And if you want to understand these things better, then the onus is on you to go and find out that information. So if you suck at finance, tough shit. You don't bury your head in the sand and say, well, okay, I'm no good at finance. That's what I did for like 3 years. I was like, well, I'm just not even going to look into Xero because it scares me and I don't want to see how much money I don't have. You kind of got to address these things head on, and like you need to be a leader in your business, and being a leader means addressing problems head on. And so like what resources do you need in order to be, to learn more and be more proficient in whatever area it is that you're currently dropping the ball? Like it's easy to go and do a, bookkeeping 101 course and understand the dynamics of what a profit and loss statement is and what a balance sheet is. it's easy to order on Amazon a copy of Profit First and go speak to a Profit First consultant and set up Profit First in your business. Like, the point is, you've got to take that step. So whatever that is, you're the one who's in charge of that. The truth is, there's always problems, and it's how you approach them, I suppose, and how you respond to those problems, which is the main difference. And in truth, we don't really have major obstacles arise that much these days, because they were sort of addressed throughout the years through process. So if something happens and it's significant, we go, why did this happen? And how did this possibly happen? And then we figure out how it did, and then we address it with process, and then it doesn't happen again. That's just something that just takes time. There's nothing I don't know how you can fast track that. But again, the key is just being receptive to it and making sure you don't do it more than once.
To finish this interview off, I want to do some quick fire questions. This is a new segment for the podcast. Quick answers to quick questions. So first question, if you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Probably roast lamb.
Roast lamb, yum. Your morning routine looks like?
Normally up before 6, changing nappies. Dad life massively at the moment.
Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm an extrovert, but I feel like as I get older, I'm becoming a little bit more introvert.
So you're an extroverted introvert?
Maybe I'm changing with age.
I think I already know the answer to this question, but the number one book you'd recommend to tradie businesses? I
would probably recommend Florence Littauer's Personality Plus to anyone. I used to buy that book by the box and give it out to people. And that book is about understanding personality profiles. And that was probably the most significant book I've ever read in my life. Not so much understanding, other people's personalities, but understanding why other people thought that I was such a dick. So understanding your own strengths and weaknesses is an extremely powerful tool in your arsenal. But there's so many good books out there. I literally have lists.
Okay, well, maybe we can drop some of those lists in the show notes.
Yeah, you bet.
Finally, success looks like to you, Matt?
Success is, I suppose, quite subjective. Like for me, I like being able to spend time with the kids, and I like not necessarily having to be at work. We've got a team now that sort of do a lot of the work for me. I suppose a combination of time and like having enough money to live comfortably. That may change looking forward. I'm not sure. But I'm at a point where I've got young children and I want to spend as much time with them as I can before they end up going to school and that kind of stuff. So,
that's so good. All right. Well, we are coming to the end of the interview. So if you can just tell the listeners where they can find you.
I am really easy to find. We are at the Site Shed for the podcast across every platform. We're really working on our YouTube at the moment. So go and subscribe to that. We're at Tradie Web Guys, again, across every platform. Again, go and subscribe to the YouTube. There's lots of education stuff coming out there on that front. We have a Facebook community of over 6,000 global trade business owners. You can go check that out. Go search the Site Shed on Facebook. You'll find the group there, fill in the questions, and one of the team will let you in. But yeah, I'm not hard to find.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show. I have really enjoyed our conversation. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with today?
If I was going to leave you with one thing, I would say just get started, and get started by spending some time and having a think about where you want to go in the next 2 to 3 years, and then reverse engineer that into years, quarters, months, weeks. You'll be amazed at how little you actually have to do in order to achieve that giant thing. So the key is getting started.
Thank you so much. I love it. Thank you so much for being on the show, Matt. It's been fantastic.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me.
Otherwise, here's to building trust and being remembered. Have a great week, and we'll catch you in the next episode.